2. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. We are off to Miami and Super Bowl 54. All of our coverage brought to you by our friends at Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast, as well as our friends at Raskin Global and Liberty Pure Solutions. I'm taking my water with me down to Miami. This guy is back on the East Coast. He has a West Coast lifestyle, but many, many years covering the New York Yankees, the Associated Press, Major League Baseball, and many other places. You can find his work out on Twitter. Barry Bloom is Boomski out on Twitter. That's Boomskie. And on the backside of, another Hall of Fame vote and cheating with the Astros and the Orioles probably losing 100 games. It is baseball season here. Boomski, what is up? Happy New Year to you, and certainly we get a baseball scandal, huh? It's another one for a young old-timer like yourself.
Yeah, really. You just go from one scandal to another in the sport.
Well, where is this one? It's a fresh wound, and this eats at the integrity and people. And as I've written, we had guys 20 years ago flying off to the Caribbean and sticking themselves with needles and syringes and full of stuff they didn't even know what they were administering to themselves to get an edge to go hit a baseball further. I can't imagine with video cameras everywhere that they haven't all seen Ocean's 11.
Well, I think baseball caused this with putting in all the replay rooms. It was unnecessary. You have a challenge system. You do it by eye and feel, and once you put it in a replay room, right off the dugout with a connection from a team official to the manager, you're putting yourself into a situation where what could go wrong. And this is what went wrong. And I'm sure other teams around the league took advantage of this too. And so, basically they need to change the whole thing.
I love your Twitter picture with Tony Gwynn, and you and I both shared a friendship with Tony. You much closer than I, and being out there, I actually found the autographed bat he gave me. It's in my shot in the back here that he gave me in Houston his final season down at then Enron Field, or I guess is what they were calling it. But, Tony Gwynn was the first guy to, grab video and really change his game and become, a complete enamored student of it at a point where a lot of guys were still scratching their crotch and, chewing tobacco and saying, I get in a cage and I do it based on this way. The modern era, if Tony were still alive to see all of this bat speed, angle, trajectory, all of the science that's gone in since he literally had VHS tapes that Flannery and he would cut up and he'd watch to figure out what pitchers were trying to pitch him in certain counts. How far it's gone in one generation for a guy like you in your eyes to see that everybody could cheat all the time, that it was sort of sitting there. I mean, I don't know how far you want to go with buzzers, on bodies and trash cans. But, Flannery's another guy that was always thought to be a high-integrity baller, gamer guy that said he was trying to steal signs. Stealing signs is part of baseball. Videotaping it and banging trash cans, probably not so much. And Greg Olson came on this week. He said, some guys get off the path. I don't know where the path is when we're putting Gaylord Perry in the Hall of Fame, right?
Well, I mean, there's been something, like we said, there's been something in baseball history, one way or another, because people essentially have always wanted to find an edge to win and make more money. That's what the whole deal is. So, you go back to even the stuff in Lee Montville's book about Babe Ruth, where he theorizes that the bellyache heard round the world was him using goat semen as a PED. So I mean, it goes back. Obviously you have the throwing of the World Series in 1919, which and the complete outlaw game of betting on baseball. It'll be interesting to see what happens in this era, because my take on all this is that this is all happening. The penalties are really tough on these people because of the coming legal gambling on the game, where you're going to have people sitting in the stands with their phones betting on everything through the MLB app. And so you basically have to have as close to a clean game as possible, because if there are things happening behind the scenes that are causing people to lose money on their bets, they're just not going to bet. So I think that's why this came up now, and why baseball is really coming down hard on it.
Well, and is baseball coming down hard and on the people that actually committed the crimes when they've allowed immunity for the players to sort of play the political game of appeasing the players? That Altuve's going to go get in the box in a couple of weeks? Seriously? And pitchers are just going to be okay with that in a game where the ethos has always been to sort of self-police itself? I mean, we've seen the outcome of that. I mean, on the back end of that Kansas State basketball fight the other night, I thought, wait till baseball season starts and Bregman and Altuve, who now have been accused, whether credibly or not, of wearing a wire and not wanting to have their jersey ripped off. I think for anybody to see this circumstantial evidence, whatever you want to call it, I think, look, we got two guys from the Astros who got their job running my pathetic baseball franchise here in Baltimore because of the way they won in Houston, because they were smarter and better and got up earlier and had video cameras, and they were scientists. No, they were cheaters. And now they're running the Orioles based on what cheating happened in Houston. I mean, the fallout and the ripples on all of this, and to think that they were going to have a systemic method of cheating that was going to stay kayfabe, that players weren't going to go to other organizations and tattletale. I mean, you cork your bat. You don't tell everybody in the clubhouse your bat's corked, right?
Well, going back, you unloaded a lot of stuff there. But starting with why the players got immunity, part of it is that they don't really have much of a system in Major League Baseball to really, fine or punish players for almost anything. I mean, you go back to the steroids, and if it didn't happen under the auspices of the drug program, which was collectively bargained, then guys could do whatever the hell they wanted if they were smart enough about it.
And they all kept the money. That's the thing I keep saying. Rafael Palmeiro still living in the gated community. None of that's changed for the steroid people.
Hey, Nestor, they're still paying these guys. I mean, they just signed Grandal to a $49 million contract, and he was suspended from 50 games when he was with the Padres. Nelson Cruz has made $48 million since he was suspended. I don't think the owners really care. I really don't. And that links back to the Hall of Fame vote, that I don't understand why people are holding Bonds and Clemens especially culpable, because Major League Baseball certainly took advantage of them while they were playing. And now, there's outrage over the fact that, my God, there's gambling in this institution. The whole thing is just hypocritical.
Barry Bloom is here. He is Boom Ski at the longtime Associated Press insider, senior contributor to Forbes magazine, now at Forbes.com, as well as sportbusiness.com. You can find him at Boom Ski, and voting on all things Hall of Fame. I want to go back. Just the last thing we talked about is where are the police? I told the story of last year when Frank Robinson passed. I wondered whether I had ever had him on the show because he was always sort of the kind of personality that didn't want to come on the radio and hang out for 20 minutes, or he ran the Orioles in the very beginning until Angelos ran him off. I actually had him on my show one time at the turn of the century, and I found the tape. It's when he was the policeman of Major League Baseball, and I think I had him on about some beanball incident or some 5-game suspension he was handing out or whatever at the time, and I'm thinking, Joe Torre has been, notoriously sort of the local policeman lately. This has been the biggest problem with football and Roger Goodell, and when Ray Rice happened here in Baltimore and in other places, that when you want the commissioner to be the policeman and he works for the owners, the Players Association's never going to be right with that, so you're never really going to be able to police the rule breakers and the cheaters in whatever case, or the guys beating their wives or their kids or running afoul of the law or whatever happens. That's probably the hardest thing in all of this is finding a policeman in sports.
Look, I don't get what you're saying. I mean, there's no policeman in sports. All of this is unionized. It's all collectively bargained. If you want to put in rules about things, then you have to collectively bargain with your players, and you have to do that in any sport. It has nothing to do. There's no one person who can be a policeman for the sport because they only have certain tools in their chest to be able to use. So the situation becomes highly complicated, and Torrey, Frank, all these guys, they had very limited power to do anything. Even the commissioner has very limited power. Really, when Bud took over as commissioner and replaced Faye Vincent, it was the first time he really acknowledged that the commissioner is the commissioner of the owners, the head of the Players Association is the commissioner of the players, and basically you have to meet together to get some sort of standard for the game. And I think because of all this, the game is very reactive to problems that arise rather than be proactive.
Well, and obviously in the steroids case, it was bargained for 15 years to allow them to continue to use it to hit home runs that they'd sold tickets to. To your point, the owners didn't seem to mind, because chicks dug the long ball. I believed in Santa Claus, Barry, back when I was reading you in Baseball Digest back in the 70s. I believed that, when Bowie Kuhn went after Charlie Finley, that it was in the best interest of the game, that the integrity of the game. And then they can Faye Vincent and decide, that they're gonna be their own law, and then they run into these problems where cheating happens, systemic, endemic, built-in cheating, whether it's steroids or whether it's sign stealing or whether it's guys beating each other up on the field and beanballing each other, that at some point you have to hand out fines and suspensions, and they have to have teeth. And if that doesn't happen, you're going to have guys wearing wires hitting home runs.
Well, again, that's the way the system is set up, and you're just not going to be able to do anything about it unless the two sides sit down and strengthen the system, and they do. I mean, they went from having survey drug testing in 2003 to penalties that have been increased over the course of the years. They put in a domestic violence program, between the players and the and baseball. They do these things as you come along, which gives the mechanisms for these things. Like a guy like Herman, who's just suspended for 81 games, and then there's no transparency in the program because nobody knows what he was culpable for. Evidently, there's not a police report or anything for the incident. But, which way do you want it?
Well, I mean, I guess there's a lot of things in baseball, including competitive balance and, salary caps and salary floors and all of these things that could have been considered 30 years ago that weren't, which lead us to where the police are. Barry, I think the Hall of Fame wants you and the Hall of Fame voters to be the police. The police managed to keep Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and Curt Schilling out another year. I guess Derek Jeter misses one vote, and the story is somebody kept Derek Jeter. You're old enough to remember when guys. I remember driving with Phil Jackman for years. He had a voter's card. He said, "We never vote for guys in the first year. Nobody deserves that." And there was an old school feeling about that. I would say that the Hall of Fame voters are the ultimate police now left in this to say, your reputation is good, your reputation is bad, and if you go to Cooperstown, then you're sanitized to some degree if you're Mike Piazza or Pudge Rodriguez or whatever, and if you don't go to Cooperstown, you're not sanitized. That sort of is what the Hall of Fame votes become about for me as I watch it from the outside.
Yeah, I was here yesterday for David Stern's memorial service, and ran into a lot of old friends who were on the NBA beat years ago. That's where I started. I started on the NBA. And Bob Ryan and I were in a bar with a couple of other people, and we were having this entire discussion. And Ryan basically said that he just hasn't gotten to the point where he's going to vote Clemens or Bonds into the Hall of Fame. And he's gotten to the point where it's become it's no fun to vote, which it's not. There's so many elements to it. And so I asked him, okay, what happens in 2 years when David Ortiz is on the ballot? And he said, well, I'm going to take the fifth right now on that. But he said he might quit voting rather than be in a position to vote for Ortiz or not vote for Ortiz. He may quit voting and retire from it, and that's where we are right now.
Well, then there's the Marvin Miller thing, which I've been on that bandwagon for 25 years. Marvin used to do my show back when he was alive, a million years ago, and discussing all the Lords of the Realm activities. Marvin Miller getting it. I got a picture of Art Modell 3 feet away from me here, but I keep it on the set. And, for the pariahs, it's a popularity club. Even if you did do things that, forwarded your game or your sport, or and certainly in Marvin Miller's case, that was always one of the great pissing matches, and we're not going to let that SOB in for what he did to baseball, which was basically change the game, which is what the Hall of Fame used to be about. But Marvin Miller, I've been talking for 25 years about his contributions and what he did for the players, and finally enough people got involved politically to make that happen. I don't even know if it matters, quite frankly.
Well, if you look at the makeup of this committee, there's no secret why he got in with this committee. It's all the executives on the committee were all people who were not around when Miller was doing what he was doing, and it was not affected by it. Whether it's the late David Glass or Sandy Alderson, there were 5 executives on that committee who actually were able to vote with their minds rather than their emotions. And the players should always have voted for Marvin because, of what he did for the Players Association and the amount of money these guys are making right now. So, that's why he finally got voted in. It was the right time and the right makeup of the committee. That's how political it is.
Is there anything you want to say about Jeter or Walker? In the aftermath of all this, or even Schilling, or any of these guys, as a guy who does vote, and you say it's not fun. Angelos took my press pass 15 years ago now, Barry. It was 2006, and I had a press pass for 21 years. I would have been a voter, right? Certainly, having been on the radio for 30 years now in Baltimore and covering the Orioles and my last name, I would have been a voter. I don't care about it. I'm 51 years old. It would be my time. I've watched a lot of baseball. I just don't take it seriously anymore. I don't take Canton seriously anymore, and I'm probably one of the guys in line to vote for that. I don't know that I'll even accept that honor if they give me that honor, even though I've worked my whole life thinking it was something I wanted to do because I know enough guys like you. I mean, the Jeter thing, it's just, he's a Hall of Famer. You put him in. I don't even know. And if somebody left him off the ballot, so what? I don't even think that that's a story for me. I was a little taken aback when I did a little deep dive because I don't have a ballot that he's like number 6 in all-time hits. Like
Right.
you wouldn't have told me that last week without looking it up. You know?
No, I knew that. I mean, what was it, 3,456 hits or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, he really, he kept climbing up and climbing up in the last year of being in the game. And, he great, what he batted about 310 or something. He's an elite player who played on, 5 championship teams in New York and was their captain for most of it or part of it. And, led the league, in that category, his leadership capabilities. He was really important to Joe Torre and Joe Girardi in the Yankee clubhouse. So, there's nothing that you can say about Jeter. And, the fact that some dumbass didn't vote for him really doesn't taint the fact that 99.7% and one vote out of 396 or whatever it was, or 398 is the issue where you didn't get the anonymous vote. I mean, those things happen obviously very rarely. I mean, Mo, probably deserved it. And I think you're at the point here now where until you get really down the line where, the Trouts have retired and those guys, then you're not going to be looking. I don't even think Ichiro is a unanimous one. Ichiro alienated a lot of people. He's going to tell, Ichiro will rue the day to how he treated the media, the U.S. media, because that's what comes back and grabs a guy. And Ichiro will get in on the first ballot, but it'll be at about high 80s, low 90s because of the way he acted. So,
Larry Walker, I mean, we could sit here and talk Jeter all day because that's easy. Look, I found an old picture of me with Larry Walker at an All-Star game back in the 90s wearing Rocky stuff. I think it was in Colorado. I never thought I was standing next to a Hall of Famer. I still, like Harold Baines. I love Harold Baines. I've shot pool with Harold. I like Harold Baines. I've never. This is why the Hall of Fame has become a little weird to me, because for most of my life, the Harold Baineses and the Larry Walkers, God bless them, Dwight Evans, God bless them, any of these guys, that it was it was a different kind of place. And because we're not putting the Bonzes and the Clemens in now, we've decided to do this. And I just don't get it. I remember arguing the Rizzuto thing 20 years ago on popularity and friendships and whatnot and politics, but I don't get the Larry Walker thing.
Well, first of all those guys that you mentioned, Rizzuto plus Mazeroski, Baines, they all were, Veterans Committee selections at one time or another. They weren't voted in by us. When you have guys like Ted Simmons, and for whatever reason, I don't understand why we didn't keep Simmons on the ballot for more than 1 year. He couldn't get 5%. I mean, this is one of the all-time great catchers. And I think we totally whiffed on that. And, that was back in 1995, 1994, when I first started voting in my second or third year. I can't even tell you whether I voted for Simmons or not. I don't remember.
Well, all you knew about Simmons was he wasn't Johnny Bench, right? Like, he was real good, but right? I mean,
a tremendous catcher.
But I think a lot of those guys, the Garveys and the Says and all, they all struggle because of comparisons to Schmidt or Brooks or the next level, and that's what the next level always was. I'm not against Ted Simmons. I watched him play. I've looked back. I could make a greater case for Ted Simmons than I can for Harold Baines.
Right, but I'm still saying in both cases you had people who didn't last on our ballot who are getting into the Hall of Fame. And I think that's a slippery slope on top of everything else. So I think what happens is because of that, you get a reaction from the baseball writers who are saying, you know what, the next time the Modern Era Committee or the Today's Game Committee votes, they're going to put him in, and it's going to embarrass the Baseball Writers Association. So let's put him in. And I think there's enough people. We are in an era of non-counting stats and war, and however that's the divide. Walker had the highest WAR of any player who wasn't in the Hall of Fame. So you can make arguments either on the new end or the old end about why Walker got voted into the Hall of Fame, and barely. I mean, it was just like 6 votes. So it meant that a lot of people, a couple of hundred, were not interested in bringing, him into the Hall of Fame. So it's not, the Hall of Fame voting is non-scientific. They don't give you any direction on how to vote. A long time ago, I think they should have just said, forget about steroids, just vote based on the person's statistics, and that's it, whether you think they should be in the Hall of Fame. And we'll have like another wing for these people, if that's what we want to do. But I think, really, Jane Forbes Clark does not want Boston Clemens in the Hall of Fame. She certainly doesn't want Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. So basically, you're eliminating some of the great players in history. Palmiero's another one. Sosa's another one. McGuire. I mean, all these guys who contributed to that era and had tremendous numbers are just never going to get into the Hall of Fame.
Well, it's unfortunate, and I think it's a shame for the Hall of Fame and for baseball and all of this and the Astros and the cheating and the 100 losses we're going to endure here. Barry, I'm going to stay up with you during the summer. I'm diving into Baltimore politics here and who's going to run our city as well as the future of our franchise here. If you make it to Baltimore, you will never eat a tourist crab cake in my town. Enjoy your travels, and if they bring you to Baltimore, I'll assume something good's going on here, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Nestor. Thanks for having me on.
Barry M. Bloom, he is Boomski, Boomskie. No one covers the game of baseball better, longer, and certainly with a deeper passion than the senior contributor at Forbes.com and SportBusiness.com as well. Always great to get his insights of 50 years of following the game and trailing it around and voting for the Hall of Fame. Pretty good week to do that. We're in Miami next week. We're at South Beach doing all things Super Bowl 54. The Ravens will not be there, but questions about Lamar Jackson, and the Ravens will be there from everybody, I'm sure. Pat Mahomes on one side, Garoppolo on the other side. We'll be broadcasting live down there all week long. You can find it out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.